Tonight, we are going to spend a full day in ancient Rome, not the Rome of emperors and battles, and not the empty ruins we see today. We're going to follow an ordinary day from beginning to end, through the work, food, bathing, religion, entertainment, noise, and quieter moments that filled the lives of the people who lived here. You'll see where people lived, what they ate, how they worked, where they got their water, how they spent their free time, and what happened as the city gradually moved from the busiest hours of the day into the night. And because we're following one continuous day, Rome will keep changing around you. The morning streets will feel different from the afternoon crowds. The afternoon will give way to evening meals, taverns, and gatherings, and eventually, the noise will fall away as people retreat indoors and the city settles into the night. So get comfortable, let the modern world fade out for a while, and come spend a day in ancient Rome. Let's begin. You wake before dawn. For a few seconds, you don't move. Your eyes are open, but the room is still almost completely dark. At first, you cannot tell where you are. There is just enough light to separate one shadow from another. A pale shape where a wall should be. A darker opening that may be a doorway. Above you, the ceiling disappears into the darkness. You lie still beneath the covers. The bed feels unfamiliar. The room is cool, though the air carries the faint warmth left behind by yesterday's fire. When you breathe in, you notice a little ash, old smoke, perhaps the faint smell of oil from a lamp that burned late into the night. Then you listen. A wheel rattles over stone somewhere outside. The sound approaches, uneven over the street, then fades. A moment later, you hear hooves, not close enough to see, but close enough to know that someone is moving through the city while much of it is still asleep. There is no clock beside you, no glowing numbers telling you how much of the night remains. You only know that dawn has not arrived. Another sound follows, a voice somewhere outside. You cannot make out the words. Then comes the scrape of something heavy being moved. You turn slightly toward the doorway. The room is still too dark to understand. Your eyes begin to adjust. The darkness is no longer completely empty. You can make out part of the wall, the shape of the doorway, and something resting near the floor, but you still cannot tell what kind of place you have woken in. Outside, another wheel passes. Then a door opens. Someone speaks. A few footsteps move through the street. You notice the cold against your face before you notice anything else. The air near the floor feels cooler than the air around your body, and for a moment, you are reluctant to leave the warmth of the bed. Somewhere nearby, a small flame may still be alive. You cannot see it clearly, but there is the faintest glow somewhere beyond the darkness. It is not enough to brighten the room. It only reminds you that someone had to keep a fire or lamp going late into the night. You listen again. The sounds inside the building are different from the sounds outside. A quiet breath. A small movement in another room. Wood shifting under someone's weight. Then the street answers with a wheel and a brief call. It is not a peaceful silence. It is a city that has simply lowered its voice. For a moment, you wonder whether everyone is asleep. They are not. Rome has no single moment when the entire city wakes. Some people have reasons to be awake long before sunrise. Others have spent the night working and are only now returning home. Some have nowhere to be for several hours and can remain asleep while the first movement begins around them. The day ahead will be different for each of them. You do not know yet which kind of morning belongs to you, but you can feel that it is approaching. The faint light near the doorway is becoming easier to see. The room no longer feels like a collection of disconnected shadows. Edges are beginning to appear, and with that little change, the city outside seems to become more real. A voice carries farther. A cart passes with less uncertainty. Somewhere, water is being moved. Another door opens. The sounds are still scattered, but together they form a pattern. Morning. You close your eyes for a moment, listening. The city is never completely silent. Somewhere, a door closes. Something knocks against stone. A dog barks once in the distance. Then quiet returns. You open your eyes again. The room is slightly clearer. The darkness around the doorway has softened. The object near the floor is easier to see, though you still cannot identify it. The first faint light of morning is beginning to reach the room. And suddenly, you realize just how strange it is to wake here. You have probably seen Rome before, even if only in your imagination. The Rome people remember is often made of marble columns, temples, arches, statues, and broken walls beneath an open sky. But the people who lived here did not wake up in ruins. They woke in homes. They opened doors. They heard neighbors moving through nearby rooms. They listened for carts in the street. They waited for morning. This is the Rome you are entering now. Not the silent city preserved in photographs, but a city being used. A living city, a crowded one. And somewhere around you, other people are beginning their own mornings. A child wakes, someone coughs, a pot is moved, a door opens, a floorboard creaks. You may not know who these people are, but you are close enough to hear the signs of their lives. That is one of the first things you notice about Rome. People are everywhere, and they are often close to one another. The walls around you do not separate you from the city as completely as modern walls might. The sounds of other lives travel. You hear them before you ever see them. Outside, the darkness continues to fade. The change is gradual. The outline of the doorway is now clear. The wall has a little more color. The objects around you begin to take shape. For the first time, you can make out the room well enough to realize that it is smaller than you imagined. You are still sitting in the half light, listening to the city outside. But now you can feel morning approaching. More footsteps, more doors, more movement somewhere beyond the walls. Rome is waking one person at a time, and as the light grows stronger, the question that has been waiting since you opened your eyes becomes unavoidable. Where, exactly, have you woken up? The answer matters. Because in Rome, the place where you sleep can tell you a great deal about the life waiting for you outside. It can tell you how much space you have, who lives around you, how much noise reaches your room, how close you are to the street, and, in a city where wealth is so unevenly distributed, it can tell you something about your position in the world. But we will leave that question for a moment. For now, the morning light is finally strong enough to show you the room itself. You let yourself rise slowly. The city outside is getting louder. The darkness has almost gone. And at last, you begin to look around. The doorway looks different now. In the first light of morning, you can finally see its edges clearly. The room behind you is still dim, but enough light has reached inside to reveal what the darkness was hiding. You look down at the place where you have been sleeping. The bed is simple. There is no thick mattress rising high from an elaborate frame. No glass window glowing with the first light of the day. Instead, there is wood, cloth, and whatever padding the household can afford. You move one hand across the bedding before slowly sitting up. For the first time since waking, you can properly look around. The room is modest. A few belongings have been placed along the walls, objects needed for ordinary life rather than objects chosen simply to decorate an empty room. There is not much space to waste. You begin to understand that this is not a room designed around comfort in the modern sense. It is a room that has to work. People sleep here. They change clothes here. They keep things here. Someone may eat here. Someone may spend much of the day here when there is nowhere else to go. And when night comes, the room becomes a place for sleeping again. You look toward the doorway. Beyond it, you can hear the rest of the building. A movement above you. Footsteps somewhere below. Someone opening a door. Then a brief conversation. The voices are too muffled to make out the words. You don't know the people making them, but you are close enough to know that they are there. That is one of the first things you notice about your home in Rome. It isn't completely private. The people around you are part of your morning, whether you know them or not. The building itself seems to carry their lives from one room to another. A footstep travels through the floor. A door closes. Something is dropped. Then everything becomes quiet again. You stand. The floor is cool beneath your feet. You take a few slow steps toward the doorway and look out. Now you can see part of the passage beyond your room. It is narrow. The building feels larger than your room, but not by much. The walls continue farther than you can see from here, and somewhere beyond them are stairs leading toward the street. There are other rooms along the way, other people, other mornings. You may never meet most of them, but you will hear them. And in a crowded Roman building, that can tell you quite a lot about how life works. This is the kind of residence known as an insula. The word can make the building sound more uniform than it really is. Not every insula looks the same. Some are larger, some are better built, and some combine living spaces with shops or workshops along the lower levels. But the basic idea is simple enough. Instead of one family occupying one private house, multiple households can share the same building. You are living in one small part of something much larger, and the difference becomes obvious the moment you step outside your room. You do not have to imagine the people who live beside you. You can hear them. Someone is moving along the passage. A person below is already heading toward the street. You hear footsteps on the stairs, getting louder for a moment, then quieter as they descend. The building is beginning to empty. Not completely, just gradually. People are going somewhere. And you realize that before you can even think about the city outside, you have to deal with the building around you. The stairs are part of everyday life. If your room is higher up, every trip outside means climbing down. Every return means climbing back up. Carrying something becomes more annoying. Carrying water becomes more important. Carrying food home means carrying it all the way back to your room. The closer you are to the ground, the easier some things become. Higher up, the city may feel more distant. At the same time, you may have more privacy from the activity immediately outside. There is no perfect arrangement. Every home comes with its own compromises. You start down the passage. The building is awake now. A door opens as you pass. You hear someone speaking inside. A child moves somewhere nearby. You continue toward the stairs. Then you notice something else. The morning has made the practical problems of living here much more obvious. One of them is water. You are thirsty. You look around for the kind of simple convenience you would barely think about in your own time. There is no tap waiting conveniently in the wall. Water has to come from somewhere. For many people living in Roman apartment buildings, that means relying on shared or public water sources rather than having a private household connection. A fountain somewhere in the neighborhood may be part of your morning routine, and that changes the meaning of the word home. A Roman home is not necessarily a place where every necessity is stored inside your walls. It may be a place where you sleep, keep your possessions, prepare some of your food, and return at the end of the day. A great deal of what you need during the day lies beyond your own walls. Water has to be collected, food has to be bought, work takes you elsewhere, and when the day's labor is finished, the baths, taverns, temples, and public spaces become part of your life. The city and the home are not separate worlds. They depend on one another. You reach the stairs. The first light coming through the building makes the stone and plaster easier to see. Someone has already gone down. You place a hand against the wall and begin following the staircase. As you descend, the building changes. The air feels different, cooler, perhaps. Where the morning air reaches farther into the building, you can hear more of the street now, a voice outside, a distant animal, something being dragged across the ground. The sounds are no longer trapped behind walls. They are coming through the entrance. You are getting closer to Rome. But before you leave, it is worth understanding why some Romans live in a building like this, while others wake somewhere very different. Because just a short distance away, another Roman may be stepping into a very different kind of home. A wealthy household may live in a domus. Instead of several households sharing one building, the house is organized around one extended household. There may be an atrium, rooms arranged around it, spaces for receiving visitors, areas for dining, private rooms, and farther inside, perhaps an open garden surrounded by columns. The house itself can become a statement. It tells visitors something about the people who live there, how much space they control, how much wealth they possess, who is allowed inside, who works there, who is expected to wait outside. Even the morning can feel different. In a wealthy house, servants may already be moving through the rooms while the owner is still waking. Someone prepares clothing, someone tends the fire, someone begins organizing food. The household is already working before its most important member has fully started the day. You do not need to see that house to understand the difference. Your own morning is quieter and more crowded. There are fewer rooms separating you from everyone else. The people around you are not distant. They are behind walls and on stairs. The city reaches into the building, and the building reaches into your life. You continue down. At ground level, the world begins to open. There may be shops along the street, workspaces, people preparing for the morning. The boundary between home and work can be much less obvious than it is in your own world. Some buildings combine living spaces with commercial activity. A person can live above a shop. A family can be surrounded by the sounds and smells of other people's work. The street itself is only a few steps away, and suddenly you understand something else. You have not really left home yet, but home has already begun to lead you into the city. This is what makes Roman urban life different from a modern idea of a private house, separated completely from everything around it. The building, the street, the neighbor, the shop, the fountain, and the workplace are all part of the same environment. Your day will move between them. And that means the place where you woke up will keep following you long after you leave it. You reach the bottom of the stairs. For a moment, you stop. The entrance is ahead. Light spills through the doorway. The smell is different here. The faint smell of your room has been replaced by the larger mixture of the neighborhood outside. Smoke, damp stone, animals, food being prepared somewhere nearby, and the first movement of the city. You are standing at the edge of your home now. Behind you is the room where you slept. Ahead is Rome. Before you open the door, there is one last thing to understand. Your home has already told us something about your life. Not everything, but enough. You know that you live among other households. That water is something you have to think about. That privacy depends partly on where you live. That the stairs beneath your feet are part of your everyday routine. And that another Roman, living only a short distance away, may experience the same city from an entirely different kind of house. Rome is shared. The lives inside it are not equal. You open the door. Morning light enters fully now. The street is waiting. And for the first time today, you step out of the room and into the city. The city is already brighter than the room you left behind. You pause for a moment outside, allowing your eyes to adjust. The street is not yet at its busiest, but morning is moving quickly now. Doors are opening. People pass in both directions. Somewhere ahead, wood scrapes against stone as someone begins setting up for the day. You have stepped into Rome. And now, before the rest of the day can begin, there are a few ordinary things to take care of. You look at what you are wearing. For most people, the tunic is the practical starting point. It is simple. It has to be. You are going to spend the day walking, standing, perhaps working. By evening, the fabric may carry some of the dust of the streets with it. Clothes are part of your appearance, certainly, but for most Romans, they are also expected to survive ordinary life. Around you, there is no single Roman way of looking. People differ in age, wealth, occupation, and status. Some clothing is finer, some is more worn. Some people have clearly spent more time preparing than others. And occasionally, you see someone whose appearance tells you rather more. The toga is difficult to miss. It is associated with Roman male citizenship and formal public life. Its folds arranged carefully around the body. On the right person, it can make an ordinary walk through the city feel almost ceremonial. But this is not the clothing you would choose if you were about to spend the morning doing heavy work. A tunic asks very little of you. The toga has opinions. You continue along the street. You are not going anywhere in particular yet. At least, not until you notice the smell. It reaches you gradually. Warm grain, a little smoke, something baked. You slow down. Now that you think about it, you are hungry. The first meal of the Roman day is known as ientaculum. Calling it breakfast may give the wrong impression if you imagine a large table covered with food. For many Romans, the morning meal is much simpler than that. Bread can be enough. Sometimes it is eaten with salt. Cheese might be added. Fruit, olives, dates, or other small foods may appear, depending on the household, the season, and what someone can afford. There is no single breakfast waiting for every person in Rome. That would be convenient. Rome is not especially concerned with convenience. You find the source of the smell nearby. Bread is being prepared. The morning's first hunger is a useful thing. It makes you pay attention to details you might otherwise ignore. The heat, the smell of grain, the rough surface of a loaf, the people stopping briefly before continuing on their way. Some have time to linger, others do not. One person eats while walking. Another has already finished and is gone before you have decided what you want. You take your own food and find somewhere to stand. The bread is simple. Perhaps that is exactly what you expected. Or perhaps you had secretly hoped that waking up in ancient Rome would involve something more dramatic. A platter carried in by servants. A roasted bird. At the very least, one decorative peacock. Not this morning. The grand meals people often associate with wealthy Rome belong elsewhere in the day. Morning does not always require an audience. You eat. Around you, the city continues. A child passes with an adult. Someone hurries by without looking at anyone. Two people stop to speak, and their conversation seems important enough to delay both of them. Then they separate and continue in opposite directions. Breakfast is not stopping Rome. It is happening inside it. You take another piece of bread. This is one of the strange things about imagining the past. You expect the differences first. The strange buildings. The unfamiliar clothes. The language you cannot understand. But hunger is not strange. You woke up. You left where you were sleeping. And now you are eating because your body expects the day to require something from it. That part needs no translation. What changes is what breakfast can mean, depending on who you are. For someone with money, there may be more choice, better ingredients, a household able to prepare food, time to eat without immediately rushing somewhere else. For someone with less, the question is simpler. What can you get? What can you afford? What will be enough to carry you into the day? The same morning can therefore begin very differently, only a few streets apart. Somewhere in Rome, someone may be sitting in a spacious house while food is brought to them. Here, another person stands with bread in one hand, already thinking about where they need to go next. Neither morning is more Roman than the other. They are both part of the same city, but the city does not treat everyone equally. You finish what you are eating and brush the crumbs from your hands. The street has changed again. There are more people now. Not enough to turn the entire road into a crowd, but enough that you notice the difference. The quiet spaces between voices are disappearing. Shops are becoming active. People who were still inside when you arrived outside are now joining the street. A day in Rome rarely begins all at once. It gathers. One door opens, then another. A person crosses the street. Someone else arrives carrying something. A shop begins serving its first customers. Before long, the city that seemed to be waking around you is simply awake. You begin walking again. Your hunger is gone. The morning feels different now. You are no longer standing outside your home, wondering what comes next. You are dressed, you have eaten, you are part of the movement around you, and the long next. You are dressed, you have eaten, you are part of the movement around you, and the longer you walk, the more obvious it becomes that everyone seems to be heading somewhere, not dramatically. Most of them are not marching toward destiny. They are simply going about their lives. But when thousands of people begin doing ordinary things at roughly the same time, ordinary movement becomes something much larger. You see someone disappear into a doorway. Another person emerges from one. A pair walks past you in conversation. Further ahead, someone calls out to another person across the street. The sound is beginning to build. You look farther down the road. Rome stretches beyond what you can see. More streets, more buildings, more people beginning their own mornings. For now, you have nowhere particular to be. That will not last. Sooner or later, every day asks for something: work, an errand, a meeting, a duty. But those things can wait a little longer. You have only just eaten. The morning is still young. And now, with the first meal of the day behind you, there is nothing left between you and the city itself. So you keep walking. Ahead, the streets are becoming busier, and Rome is only beginning to show you how much can happen inside a single morning. You keep walking. The street is busier now than it was when you first stepped outside. More people have appeared from the buildings around you, and the quiet spaces between them are beginning to disappear. Then, just ahead, someone stops. A man carrying a load has paused in the middle of the street. You slow down. There is nowhere useful to go around him. Someone behind you has the same problem. For a few seconds, several people simply wait while the load is shifted out of the way. Then the path opens. You move forward. It is a small thing, barely worth remembering, but you are beginning to understand how Rome works. The streets belong to everyone at once. People walking to work. People carrying things. People making deliveries. People buying food. People looking for someone they know. Animals being led through the crowd. And all of them are trying to use the same space. You continue around the next corner. The street bends sharply, and the buildings close in around you. You cannot see very far ahead. A person disappears around the corner, followed a moment later by another. Then you see a small shop opening onto the street. Its entrance is wide, and someone is already arranging goods where passing customers can see them. A few steps farther, another doorway is open, then another. The more you walk, the more difficult it becomes to separate the street from the businesses beside it. The city is working directly in front of you. A customer stops. Someone hands something over. A voice calls from inside a shop. Another answers from across the street. You keep moving. A person carrying a basket comes toward you. You shift to one side. Someone else passes behind you. For a moment, you are squeezed between them. Then the space opens again. You begin to notice how often you are adjusting your path. In a modern street, you may think of walking as following a route from one point to another. Here, the route changes constantly. Someone stops in front of you. A load appears around a corner. Two people decide to speak in exactly the place where everyone else needs to pass. An animal refuses to move as quickly as its owner would like. Nobody seems particularly surprised. You simply wait, step around, and continue. The street asks for a little patience, and sometimes a little creativity. You walk farther. The buildings become more crowded. The sounds become harder to separate. A voice from one doorway overlaps with another farther down the street. Someone is calling out to attract customers. A pot is set down. Wood knocks against stone. Footsteps pass behind you, then disappear ahead. The street is filling with small interruptions, each one changing the movement around it. And there are more shops now. Some are selling things you recognize. Others contain objects whose purpose you would have to ask about. The people working inside are not simply waiting for a modern-style queue of customers to appear. They are part of the street. Their doorways open directly onto it. Their customers stand nearby. Their goods are visible from outside. A person passing by can become a customer simply by slowing down. That makes the street valuable. You do not have to bring the city to the shop. The city is already passing in front of it. You walk past a seller, calling out to people nearby. Another person stops to inspect something. They ask a question. The seller answers. A brief discussion follows. Then a decision is made, and the two people separate. The entire exchange takes less than a minute. You continue. A city this large depends on thousands of these small exchanges happening every day. Someone sells, someone buys, someone carries, someone delivers, someone repairs, someone cooks. You can see the result everywhere, even though you have not yet stopped to think about where any of it comes from. A basket appears at one doorway. A crate is carried through another. A worker disappears into a shop. Another emerges, carrying something that has clearly come from somewhere else. The city keeps receiving things, changing them, selling them, using them, and sending them onward. You notice that the street itself is becoming a little wider. More people can move here, but that does not mean it is quiet. There are simply more ways to collide. Someone passes in front of you. Another person approaches from the side. A group has stopped near a doorway. You slow down, wait for a gap, and move through. For a moment, you find yourself in the middle of the flow. People are going in every direction. You do not know where all of them are heading, but they seem to know. Some walk quickly. Others take their time. A few stop to speak. One person disappears into a shop and is replaced almost immediately by someone coming back out. The street keeps changing even when you remain in one place. You stop for a moment and watch. This is not a grand Roman monument. No emperor is passing by. No temple ceremony is taking place. Nothing important enough to be written into a history book may happen here today. And yet, this is where much of the city actually lives. People buying breakfast, people carrying supplies, people opening businesses, people meeting friends, people going somewhere they have gone hundreds of times before. Rome does not need a spectacle to feel enormous. You can feel its size in the number of people who have somewhere to be. you start walking again. The road carries you toward a busier part of the neighborhood. The sound grows gradually louder. Not because one thing has changed, but because more things are happening together. You hear voices around you now, instead of one distant conversation. A merchant calls to someone. A customer answers. Footsteps move in front of you. Someone behind you is speaking. A child asks a question. An animal makes a brief protest and is pulled onward. Then, somewhere farther ahead, a larger sound rises above the rest. Something heavy is being moved. You cannot see it yet. You only hear it. The people around you notice as well. Several step to the side. You do the same. A load comes through the street, taking up more space than you expected. For a few seconds, everyone has to make room. Then it passes. The movement begins again, and you realize that the same street that carries people also carries the things they depend on: food, materials, tools, goods for shops, supplies for households. Everything the city needs has to enter it somehow, move through it, and eventually reach the people who need it. That is why the streets can become so busy. There are simply too many people and too many things trying to move at once. You continue forward. The street opens slightly, and for the first time you can see farther ahead. More buildings, more people, more shops, more movement. The Rome you could only hear before dawn is now completely awake. You have been walking for a while, but you have barely gone any distance compared with the size of the city around you. And that may be the strangest thing about it. Rome feels enormous, not because you can see the whole city. You cannot. It feels enormous because wherever you look, there is another part of it already in motion. Another street, another shop, another group of people, another load being carried somewhere, another person who needs something from someone else. You keep walking. And now that you have seen the streets come alive, another question begins to form. Who is actually responsible for making all of this happen? The bread you ate this morning had to be grown, transported, milled, baked, and sold. The clothes on people's bodies had to be made. The goods in those shops had to arrive. The buildings themselves had to be constructed and maintained. Even the simple things that seem to appear effortlessly around you are the result of someone else's work. You look around again. It is suddenly easier to see the workers, the people carrying loads, the people opening shops, the people preparing food, the people repairing things. The people who began working long before the streets became this busy. Until now, they were simply part of the background. But perhaps they are the reason the background exists at all. You walk on. The crowd closes around you again. And somewhere ahead, beyond the shops and the noise, Rome's working day is about to become much more visible. Because before this enormous city can entertain you, feed you, or impress you, someone has to make it function. And the people doing that work are all around you. You keep walking. The workers you noticed earlier are easier to see now. A man carries a load through the crowd, keeping it close as people move around him. Ahead, someone is already opening a shop. Another person brings something out from inside and sets it near the entrance. You had been looking at these people simply as part of the morning rush. Now you start to notice what they are actually doing. Rome needs an enormous amount of work just to get through an ordinary day. Food has to be prepared. Clothing has to be made and repaired. Goods have to be carried, sold, and stored. Buildings have to be maintained. Tools have to be produced. Someone has to do all the small jobs that make it possible for everyone else to carry on with theirs. You pass a shop that is already open. Its entrance faces directly onto the street. A customer stops there, speaks to the person inside, and waits while something is brought forward. The exchange is quick. The customer leaves. Another person takes their place. You keep moving. In a city like Rome, a shop does not need to be hidden away from the street. The street itself provides the customers. People are already passing the doorway. Someone only has to stop. That makes the road around you more than a route through the neighborhood. It is where buying and selling happen in full view of everyone walking past. And the same is true of many workshops. The work does not always disappear behind a closed door. You might hear it before you see it. The strike of a tool, the movement of wood, the grinding of something heavy, the smell of whatever is being prepared inside. You walk on, and the smell of bread reaches you again. You recognize it immediately. This time, you stop to look. A bakery is already busy. What seemed simple when you ate breakfast becomes more complicated when you see where it comes from. The grain had to be grown somewhere beyond the city. It had to reach Rome. It had to be stored. It had to be ground. Then the dough had to be prepared, and the ovens heated before a loaf could finally reach the street. By the time you bought your breakfast, almost all of that work had disappeared. All you saw was the bread. Now you can see the people behind it. A bakery is not simply a place where bread appears. It is a place where someone starts work early enough that people like you can eat before the rest of the city has fully woken. The work is hot, repetitive, physical, and necessary. Bread is not a luxury that people can simply stop wanting. The city needs it every day. You move on. A little farther down the street, the smell changes. This one is less pleasant. A workshop is processing cloth. The finished clothing you saw earlier began somewhere like this. Wool has to be cleaned and worked. Cloth has to be handled, washed and prepared. Different stages require different kinds of labor, and not all of them look particularly pleasant from the outside. You see the final garment when someone is wearing it. You rarely think about the hands that prepared the material before it reached them. That is true of almost everything around you. The tools people use, the food they eat, the clothes they wear, the objects they buy. By the time those things reach the street, the work that produced them has already been divided among other people. You keep walking. A craftsman sits at work nearby, concentrating on something held in both hands. You cannot tell exactly how long it has taken to learn the skill. Years, perhaps. Some trades require knowledge that cannot simply be picked up in an afternoon. A skilled worker may spend much of a lifetime doing the same kind of work, becoming faster and more precise with experience. Other jobs require strength more than specialist training. Someone carries goods, someone lifts, someone cleans. Someone moves materials from one place to another. Some work is highly visible. Some happens behind the doors of private households. Some leaves behind impressive objects. Other work disappears the moment it is finished. You pass people doing all of it without really being able to separate one world from another. A person selling food can stand only a few steps from a craftsman. A delivery can interrupt a customer. A porter can pass through the middle of a conversation. The same street gives all of them a place. You continue toward a busier stretch. There are more goods changing hands here. Someone examines an object carefully before deciding whether to buy it. A seller waits. Another customer moves closer. A price is discussed. The buyer finally agrees. The seller hands the item over. Then the next customer approaches. Small transactions like this are easy to overlook, but Rome is full of them. People need food. They need clothing. They need tools. They need repairs. They need things brought from somewhere else. The larger city becomes possible because thousands of these smaller exchanges happen every day. You do not see the entire system. You only see one purchase, then another. But the pattern repeats everywhere, and some goods have traveled a long way before reaching this street. Rome's size means the city cannot depend entirely on what can be produced inside the neighborhood where you are standing. Grain, wine, oil, and many other products arrive from outside the city and move through its markets, warehouses, and shops before reaching the people who use them. You may never see the farm where your food began. You may never meet the person who transported it. You may never know who stored it before it was sold. You simply encounter it at the end of the journey. The same thing happens with cloth, tools, and other goods. A city this large connects people who may live nowhere near one another, and someone has to carry those connections. That is where another kind of worker appears. A porter moves through the street with a load. There is nothing glamorous about the job. It is simply something that has to be done. The merchant cannot carry everything. The shopkeeper cannot collect every delivery. The household cannot move every object it needs. Someone has to take the weight from one place to another. You watch the porter disappear around a corner. Then another person takes his place in the street. You begin to notice something. The city never seems to run out of work. There is always something arriving, something being repaired, something being prepared, something being sold. And because Rome is so large, one person's work can create another person's job. The bakery needs grain. The merchant needs transport. The shop needs goods. The customer needs money to buy them. The worker needs somewhere to live and something to eat. One part of the city keeps producing demand for another. That makes Rome feel less like a collection of separate businesses and more like a huge network of people depending on one another. But not everyone enters that network on equal terms. You pass another worker and notice the difference immediately. Some people seem to control their own time. Others clearly do not. Some work because they run their own business. Some work for someone else. Some are highly trained. Others are doing difficult jobs that require little recognition, even though the city could not function without them. And some workers have very little control over the work itself. You have already seen enough to know that Roman society is unequal. Now you can see that inequality inside the working day as well. A wealthy Roman may own a business without spending the morning doing the physical labor himself. A craftsman may have years of experience but far fewer resources. A shopkeeper may depend entirely on the number of customers who stop that morning. A person working inside a household may have almost no choice about what their day looks like. Even the idea of a working day means different things to different people. A baker has one rhythm. A merchant has another. A person carrying goods has another. Someone employed inside a wealthy household may have started work long before you left your room. You continue through the street. By now, the morning is fully underway. The shops are open. Customers are moving between them. The workshops are active. Goods are changing hands. And what seemed like a simple walk through Rome has become something else. You are beginning to see how much effort stands behind the ordinary things you take for granted. The bread you ate this morning was not simply food. It was the end of a chain of work. The clothes around you did not simply appear. Someone prepared every part of them. The goods in the shops did not arrive by themselves. People carried them, stored them, and sold them. Even the buildings around you require workers to build, repair, and maintain them. You stop for a moment at the edge of the street. A man passes carrying a load. Someone calls to a customer. A worker bends over a task inside a doorway. A shopkeeper counts something on a table. Further away, another person is already carrying the next delivery. None of these people are doing the same job, but together they are producing the ordinary life of Rome. And for the first time, you begin to understand something about the city that you could not have seen from your bed this morning. Rome's size is not created only by its buildings. It is created by the people who keep those buildings, shops, streets, and households functioning every day. The more you notice them, the harder it becomes to think of the city's working population as one group. They have different skills, different incomes, different freedoms, different lives. And those differences matter, because some of the people you have been watching choose their work. Others depend on it, and some do not have the freedom to choose at all. You look back toward the street behind you. The baker is still working. The shops are still open. The loads are still moving. The day continues as though none of this required explanation. But now you know better. Someone is always doing the work. And if you want to understand who really makes Rome run, you have to look more closely at the people behind that work. Because in Roman society, the difference between a worker who controls their own labor and one who does not can change almost every part of their life. You keep walking. The streets are still busy, and the workers you noticed earlier have not disappeared. The baker is still at the oven. The porter is somewhere ahead with his load. Shops are serving customers, and the workshops behind them continue with the day's work. But now you find yourself looking at the people rather than the work. Who decided that this was what they would spend the day doing? For some Romans, the answer is simple. They chose a trade, found work, or inherited a business. For others, the choice was much narrower. Their work belonged to an employer, a household, or a person who had legal control over them. Slavery was part of ordinary Roman life. You could encounter enslaved people in private homes, workshops, businesses, transport, and other parts of the economy. There was no single kind of work associated with slavery. One person might spend the morning carrying loads, while another performed a skilled trade that had taken years to learn. From the street, you would not always know the difference. A person working at a bench might be free. The person beside them might be enslaved. They could know the same techniques, use the same tools, and produce the same goods, yet the amount of control they had over their own lives could be completely different. That distinction follows the worker home. A free worker may dislike the work, but in principle can leave it and look for something else. An enslaved worker does not have that same choice. Their labor exists within a relationship of ownership. The person who owns them can determine where they work, what they do, and how their time is used. For some, that means domestic work. A large household can require people to cook, clean, prepare clothing, carry messages, look after children, manage rooms, and deal with visitors. The people living comfortably inside the house may barely notice how much labor is happening around them. The work is supposed to feel effortless. It is not effortless. Someone is making it happen. You pass a wealthy house and begin to think about the difference between what you see from the street and what might be happening inside. A household like this can contain many different roles. Some people are there because they are family, others because they have business with the household, others because they work there. And an enslaved person's position can vary enormously. One may have little skill and spend the day on exhausting physical tasks. Another may be trained to keep accounts. Another may teach children. Another may work as a doctor or perform another skilled occupation. A skilled position can make a person's circumstances different, but it does not make them free. That is one of the uncomfortable contradictions of Roman society. A person can be trusted with important work and still have very little control over their own life. You continue through the street. The same is true in workshops. A craft can require years of experience. Someone who understands the trade well can become extremely valuable to a business or household. But value is not freedom. Being trusted is not freedom either. A person may be given responsibility because their owner knows they are capable, while still having no right to simply walk away and start another life. That difference would have mattered every day. It could determine where you slept, who you lived with, where you went, and who had the final say over your time. And then there was the possibility of becoming free. Roman society allowed some enslaved people to be manumitted. A person who was freed could go on to work, earn money, own property, and build a life of their own. For some, that life could be remarkably successful. But freedom did not erase the relationship with the person who had owned them. A former owner could become a patron, and the freed person could still owe obligations to that patron. So manumission changed a person's legal position, but it did not simply wipe away everything that came before it. You could be free and still have ties to the household that once owned you. You could earn money and still be known as a former slave. You could build a successful business and still occupy a different place in Roman society from someone who had been born free. That is why Roman status is harder to understand than a simple division between free and enslaved. A person might be free-born but poor. Another might have been enslaved and later become wealthy. A freed person could have money, customers, and influence. A free worker might still struggle to survive. A wealthy household could depend heavily on people who had almost no control over their own lives. The legal label mattered, but it was never the only thing that mattered. Wealth mattered. Citizenship mattered. Family connections mattered. Patronage mattered, and the work a person performed could change how other people saw them. You notice this as you walk. The city gives you no obvious sign telling you who is free and who is enslaved. The porter, carrying a heavy load, may be free. He may be enslaved. The person behind the counter may own the business, work for someone else, or belong to the household that operates it. The worker you saw earlier may have more freedom than the person standing beside them, even if their jobs look almost identical. The street hides those differences surprisingly well. You only see the work. To understand the person doing it, you have to know what happens outside the moment you are watching, and this is where the economic life of Rome becomes more complicated. The city depends on an enormous number of people, but they do not all participate on equal terms. Some control their own work. Some depend on employers. Some are tied to patrons. Some belong to households. And some are owned. All of them still contribute to the same city. That means the bakery you saw earlier, the shops around you, and the goods moving through the streets are supported by a mixture of people with very different lives. You walk on. The morning is now well underway. The work you watched earlier continues around you almost without pause. Someone is still baking. Someone is still carrying. Someone is still repairing. Someone is still selling. And for the first time, you begin to see the scale of the system behind the street. Rome does not simply contain a large number of people. It has to provide for them. They need food. They need water. They need somewhere to wash. They need places to dispose of what they no longer want. They need ways to deal with the waste produced by households, businesses, animals, and workshops. All of that has to happen while hundreds of thousands of people continue living on top of one another. You glance back along the street. Only a short while ago, you were thinking about where the workers were going and what they were carrying. Now another question has appeared. What happens to everything after the work is finished? The bread is eaten. The water is used. Food is prepared. Animals leave their mess behind. Workshops produce scraps. Households throw things away. The city keeps bringing things in, using them, and getting rid of what remains. And the larger Rome becomes, the harder that final part becomes to ignore. Someone has to collect it. Someone has to move it. Someone has to decide where it goes. The street ahead is already filling again. You keep walking. Behind you, the workers return to their jobs. Ahead of you, Rome is becoming busier by the minute. And somewhere beneath all that activity is a problem every city eventually has to face. A city can become very good at bringing things in. The harder question is what happens after everyone is finished with them. In Rome, the answer is written into the water flowing through the city, the drains beneath its streets, the public toilets, the household waste, and the mess left behind by hundreds of thousands of people living together. That is where your attention turns next. The people around you keep working. The bakery is still busy somewhere behind you. Shops remain open. Goods continue moving through the streets. But after watching how much effort goes into feeding the city and keeping its businesses running, you begin to notice another side of all that activity. Water. A man passes carrying a large container. Another follows with one of his own. You had already thought about water when you first left your home, but out here, you can finally see what that means on a larger scale. Rome has spent enormous effort bringing water toward the city. Aqueducts carry it from distant sources. Reservoirs and distribution systems help direct it where it is needed. Public fountains provide access to people who do not have a private supply inside their homes. The system is impressive. The morning routine is still remarkably ordinary. Someone arrives at a fountain. They fill a container. They carry it away. Another person waits their turn. For the people using the fountain, the great engineering behind the water supply is easy to forget. They simply need enough water to get through the day. Drinking, cooking, washing, household chores. The water arrives because an enormous system has been built to make that possible, but the last part of the journey still belongs to the person carrying it. You watch someone lift a filled container and start back toward the buildings, and for a moment, you think about the distance that water may have traveled. It may have begun far outside Rome. It traveled toward the city through carefully engineered channels, entered the distribution network, and eventually reached a fountain where someone could collect it. From there, it has to make the final journey on foot. The city can bring water in. It cannot carry every cup to your lips. That still requires you. And once water enters a city this large, another problem follows it. What happens after people have used it? This is where Roman infrastructure becomes especially interesting. Rome has drains. It has sewers. It has public toilets. It has systems designed to move water and waste away from heavily occupied parts of the city. But this is not a modern sanitation network in which every household has a private bathroom connected to underground pipes. The impressive public systems exist alongside much more basic arrangements inside ordinary homes. That difference becomes obvious when you think about the toilet. You may have expected one in your room. There isn't one. For many people, the alternatives are shared facilities, containers, pits, or other arrangements suited to the building and neighborhood. And some public toilets are remarkably open by modern standards. You walk into one and see a row of stone seats positioned beside one another. There are no private cubicles separating you from the person next to you. People sit together. They talk. They wait. Someone comes in. Someone else leaves. The practical part is simple. The idea of privacy is different. For a modern visitor, that may be the strangest thing about the room. You might instinctively look for a door. There isn't one. Instead, the toilet is another shared part of urban life. Water can be used to help carry waste away, and some public facilities are connected to drainage and sewer systems. But the presence of sewers does not mean everything disappears underground. The city is too large for the system to work perfectly everywhere. Not every home has the same facilities. Not every neighborhood has the same infrastructure. And not every kind of waste is something a drain can simply carry away. Food scraps remain. Broken objects remain. Animal waste remains. Workshops produce materials that have no further use. Households have things they no longer want. The city produces waste simply because the people living in it are alive. They eat, they drink, they work, they trade, they keep animals, they repair things, they throw things away. Every one of those activities leaves something behind. You notice the difference as you continue walking. Near one street, the smell of food is still pleasant. A little farther on, another smell replaces it. You keep moving. The smells overlap because the city does not neatly divide clean activities from dirty ones. Food can be prepared close to workshops. Animals move through the same streets as people. Waste can accumulate where it is difficult to remove quickly. The result depends on the neighborhood, the building, the work being done there, and how effectively waste is being managed. So the old image of Rome as either a remarkably clean engineering marvel or a completely filthy city misses something important. Both sides can exist at the same time. The water system can be extraordinarily sophisticated. The street outside can still be unpleasant. A public fountain can provide fresh water only a short walk from a place where waste has accumulated. The city can build sewers, while some households still rely on much simpler ways of dealing with what they produce. That contradiction is part of life here. The engineering is advanced. The daily reality is imperfect. And because so many people live close together, those imperfections matter. People are not just bothered by unpleasant streets. Crowded environments can also create difficult conditions for health. The Romans do not have modern microbiology. They do not know about bacteria moving through contaminated water or living on surfaces too small to see. But they can still observe illness. They can see that some places seem unhealthy. They can see disease spread through communities. They can notice that wounds sometimes become dangerous, and that certain conditions seem to make sickness more likely. They simply explain those observations differently. Bad air can be blamed. Rotting matter can be blamed. Foul smells can be blamed. Later, physicians develop elaborate ideas about how harmful substances might move through the environment. Their explanations are often wrong in ways that modern medicine can identify easily. But the problem they are trying to solve is very real. How do you keep a city healthy when people live this close together? There is no single answer. Clean water helps. Removing waste helps. Keeping living spaces cleaner helps. But none of those things can completely separate people from the environment around them. You continue along the street. Someone passes carrying water again. A worker removes something from a doorway. A public fountain draws another group of residents. The city is constantly moving things in one direction and another. Water comes toward people. People use it. Waste moves away. At least, That is the intention. The system does not always manage to keep those two worlds perfectly separate. And perhaps that is the most important thing to understand about Roman sanitation. The Romans are not living without infrastructure. They are living with infrastructure that has limits. They can solve enormous problems with engineering, organization, and public investment. But an ancient city cannot simply make every unwanted thing vanish. Someone still has to empty containers. Someone still has to clean. Someone still has to maintain drains. Someone still has to deal with what the streets collect. And all of those jobs become part of the same urban economy you were watching earlier. The city needs water workers. It needs people dealing with waste. It needs people maintaining its public facilities. It needs people cleaning spaces that thousands of others use. The systems underneath Rome are supported by human hands just as much as the shops and workshops above them. You keep walking. The morning is now well advanced. The city is louder than it was when you first woke. And yet, as you move through it, you begin to notice another change. People are heading in one direction. Not everyone, but enough that the movement catches your attention. Some are carrying small bags. Others are talking as they walk. A few seem to have finished their morning tasks and are moving towards somewhere else. The smell in the air changes again. This time, it is not food. There is warmth, moisture, smoke from somewhere ahead, and underneath it, the unmistakable smell of heated water. You follow the movement. Rome's water supply has been one of the foundations of your morning. Now you are about to see what happens when that water becomes something more than a necessity. Ahead, a large public building is beginning to fill. People enter. Others emerge. Inside are rooms built around heat, water, bathing, exercise, conversation, and rest. The baths are opening into the day. And for Romans, they are about to become much more than a place to wash. The building ahead is larger than you expected. People are moving through its entrance in both directions. Some arrive alone, others come in small groups, already talking as they enter. You follow them inside. The change from the street is immediate. The air is warmer here, and the noise outside begins to fade behind you. Instead of the uneven rhythm of carts and footsteps, you hear voices echoing through larger rooms. A few moments ago, water was something you thought about because you needed to collect it. Here, water has become part of an entirely different kind of experience. You have entered the baths. There is no single layout shared by every Roman bathhouse. Some are relatively small, while the larger complexes contain several rooms, open spaces, pools, exercise areas, and places where people can sit and talk. But the purpose is much the same. You have come to wash, but you have not come only to wash. People spend time here. That becomes obvious almost immediately. You see people talking as they move between rooms. Others are resting. A few have come to exercise before bathing. Some appear to have nowhere particularly urgent to be, which may be one of the attractions. The baths give people somewhere to go when they are not working. You continue farther inside. The room you enter is comfortably warm. Compared with the street outside, the difference is striking. You begin to understand that the heat is not an accidental byproduct of the building. It is part of the design. Somewhere below the floor, furnaces are burning. Workers tend them. Heat passes through spaces beneath the rooms and helps warm the floors and walls. You cannot see most of that work from here. All you feel is the result. The room is warm because someone has been keeping it that way. You sit for a while and let the heat settle around you. Other people are doing the same. The conversation never completely stops. Someone speaks to a friend nearby. Another person listens. Someone else enters, looks around, and finds a place to sit. There is nothing particularly remarkable about any one conversation. That is part of what makes the place interesting. People do not need an important reason to spend time here. The baths can simply become part of the routine of being in Rome. You move into a hotter room. The change is gradual at first. Then the heat becomes much stronger. Your skin begins to sweat. The air feels heavy, and the warmth seems to surround you from every direction. The experience is physical. You are not simply standing in a room with hot water. Your body is being exposed to different temperatures in sequence. Eventually, you will cool down again. That contrast is part of the pleasure. But before that happens, you notice another part of the bathing routine: oil. Instead of depending on soap in the modern sense, Romans could apply oil to the skin and then remove it with a curved scraper called a strigil. You watch someone nearby use one. The motion is simple but deliberate, drawing the scraper along the skin and removing the mixture of oil, sweat, and dirt. It is an unfamiliar way of washing, but once you understand what is happening, it makes sense. The bath is not merely about sitting in water. Different parts of the process have different purposes. Heat, oil, scraping, washing, cooling, and rest all have their place. You move on. The room ahead is cooler. After the heat, the change feels almost immediate. The air against your skin is refreshing. Somewhere nearby is a pool of colder water. You hesitate before stepping in. Then you lower yourself into it. The cold is sharp for a moment. Your body adjusts. You remain there briefly, allowing the heat to leave you. Around you, the conversations continue. The baths are busy, but not chaotic. People move through them at their own pace. Some have come for the bathing itself. Others are clearly here for the company. That is one of the reasons these buildings become such important parts of Roman urban life. A person can arrive dirty from work and leave clean. But they can also arrive intending to meet someone. A merchant can discuss business. Friends can catch up. An acquaintance can appear unexpectedly. Someone with time to spare can simply sit and talk. The building creates opportunities that a private home does not. Outside, Rome is spread across streets and neighborhoods. Inside, for a while, people are gathered together. That does not mean social differences disappear. They do not. Roman society remains deeply unequal, and access to the most luxurious facilities can depend on wealth, location, and circumstance. But public bathing still brings people into a shared environment, and for many Romans, that matters. You begin to notice how much time the building seems designed to absorb. There is no obvious reason to hurry. The walls are warm. The water is available. People are talking. There are places to sit. There may be exercise areas, courtyards, or spaces where food and drink can be obtained. A quick wash can become part of a much longer visit. That may be why the baths can feel less like a modern bathroom and more like a public institution. You are here because you need to wash. You stay because there is no particular reason to leave immediately. You move back toward the warmer rooms. A little later, you cool down again. By now, the sequence feels familiar. Warmth has made you relax. The cooler water wakes you again. The routine continues at its own pace. And underneath all of it is an enormous amount of infrastructure. The water has to reach the building. The furnaces have to be supplied and tended. The rooms have to be cleaned. The pools have to be maintained. The entire complex has to keep functioning while people come and go throughout the day. That means the baths are not simply a luxury created by Roman engineering. They are also another place where the city's labor becomes almost invisible. You enjoy the warmth. Someone else has to keep the fire burning. You step into the water. Someone has helped make that water available. You leave the room feeling refreshed. Workers remain behind to prepare the building for the next person. The same pattern keeps appearing across Rome. Comfort is rarely as simple as it looks. You eventually make your way back toward the entrance. The sounds of the street begin to return. The temperature changes again. Warm air gives way to the cooler morning outside. You step out. Rome is still moving. The shops remain open. Workers continue through the streets. People are carrying on with whatever brought them outside in the first place. You walk a little farther. Then you notice something beside a doorway. A small shrine. It is easy to miss. Someone has stopped there for only a moment. They place a small offering before it, pause, and continue on their way. You keep walking. A little farther along, you notice another. Then another. They are not grand temples. They are small parts of the places where people actually live. And once you begin noticing them, you realize they have been around you all morning. A shrine beside a doorway. A small sacred image inside a home. An offering left in a quiet corner. A brief ritual performed before someone continues with an ordinary task. Nothing about these moments looks extraordinary to the people doing them. That may be what makes them so revealing. Religion is not something they have to leave the city to find. It is already here. It follows people into their homes, their businesses, and their daily routines. You walk on, watching another person pause at a shrine before moving back into the morning crowd. And now you begin to wonder what that small gesture means. Who are they praying to? Why place the offering there? What do they believe the gods are doing while they work, eat, travel, and sleep? The questions stay with you as you continue through the street. The baths are behind you now. Ahead, Rome is still busy. But you are starting to notice something you had overlooked when you first arrived. The city is not only full of people making a living, it is full of people trying to understand the world around them. And their gods are part of that world. The small shrine is still there when you look back. It sits beside the doorway, easy to miss among the ordinary details of the street. A person has stopped in front of it. They place a small offering there, pause for a moment, and then continue on their way. No crowd gathers. Nothing in the street changes. A shop remains open nearby. People continue walking past. Someone carrying a basket barely seems to notice. You might have missed the whole thing earlier. Now you find yourself looking again. The shrine is small, but it tells you something important about Rome. Religion does not begin inside the great temples. It can begin at home. Inside a Roman house, a household may keep a small shrine for the gods and other figures important to the family. The exact arrangement varies, but these spaces can contain images, offerings, lamps, and objects connected with the protection of the household. The ritual itself does not have to be dramatic. A little food, some wine, a brief prayer, a moment of attention before the day's work begins. The important thing is that it becomes part of ordinary life. The people living in the house may eat nearby, talk nearby, prepare for work nearby, and still stop for a religious act that takes almost no time at all. You think back to the building where you woke. It is easier now to imagine the room differently. Behind one doorway, someone may have a household shrine. Behind another, a family may be preparing food. Somewhere else, a person may be leaving for work. The same building can contain all of these things at once. Roman household religion also makes more sense once you remember that a familia is larger than the modern idea of a small family living together. It can include relatives, dependents, and enslaved members of the household. The people under one roof may not all have the same position, but they can still belong to the same domestic world. And the household itself has religious responsibilities. You continue walking. The little shrine disappears behind you, but now you notice another one farther along the street. This one is different. It is built into a more public setting where people passing through the neighborhood can see it. Someone has left an offering. You cannot tell who. It may have been placed there hours ago. It may be part of a practice that has been repeated for years. The neighborhood has its own religious life. The city is divided into countless smaller communities, and those communities have places and traditions that matter to the people who live nearby. Religion can therefore connect people at several levels at once. There is the household, there is the neighborhood, and beyond both is the larger religious life of Rome itself. A temple appears farther ahead. Now the scale changes. The small shrine beside a doorway was meant for people living around it. This building is meant to be seen. Columns rise above the street. A staircase leads toward the entrance. The structure has been built to make an impression. People can come here for offerings, sacrifices, prayers, festivals, and other public religious activities. You stop for a moment outside. The city is still doing everything it was doing before. Merchants are working. People are carrying goods. Someone is trying to attract a customer. And yet the temple stands in the middle of all of it. Religion is not separated from the rest of the city. It shares the same streets. The same people who spend the morning buying food can later make an offering. A person who works in a shop may also take part in a festival. A household that spends most of its day concerned with ordinary problems can still observe days set aside for religious reasons, and some of those days can change the rhythm of the city itself. Imagine arriving one morning and finding the streets behaving differently. People are preparing for a festival. The usual movement has slowed in some places and gathered in others. Someone is carrying an offering. Others are dressed for the occasion. A procession begins to form. People who would normally be scattered across the city are moving toward the same place. For a while, ordinary business has to make room for something else. This is not simply religion happening inside a temple. The religion has come out into the streets. A festival can involve sacrifices, prayers, processions, feasting, and gatherings, depending on the occasion. Some are associated with particular gods. Others are connected with agriculture, civic life, military victories, or the traditions of Rome itself. The calendar is therefore more than a way of counting days. Certain dates already carry expectations about what people will do, where they will go, and what they will remember. You continue walking past the temple. The sound of the crowd fades behind you. A smaller shrine appears near another building. Then another. The city has made room for religion at every scale. Some places are monumental. Others are barely larger than the objects placed inside them. That difference is worth remembering. The Grand Temple shows what a city, a community, or a wealthy patron can build. The small shrine shows what an ordinary household or neighborhood can maintain. Both are part of Roman religious life. And Rome's religious world is not limited to traditions that began in the city itself. The empire has brought people together from across the Mediterranean and far beyond it. Their gods and rituals travel with them. Some traditions become closely associated with particular communities. Others find a place within the broader religious landscape of Rome. A person can therefore encounter practices that originated far from Italy without ever leaving the city. The streets carry more than goods and people. They carry beliefs. But despite all this variety, much of Roman religious life returns to familiar concerns. People want protection. They want healthy families. They want successful journeys. They want good harvests. They want their businesses to prosper. They want help when someone is ill. They want their dead remembered. The gods are not only figures from stories. For the people making offerings, they are part of the practical world. A farmer can pray for a harvest. A traveler can ask for protection. A household can ask for the well-being of its members. A person beginning something important can make an offering before continuing. The ritual may be small. The reason behind it may be deeply personal. You pass another doorway. This time, you notice the shrine immediately. A small image, a little offering, a flame. Someone has stopped there before beginning whatever comes next. Then they leave. The street returns to normal. You keep walking. It strikes you that the most revealing religious moments in Rome may not always be the grandest ones. A temple can show you what the city wants people to see. A household shrine can show you what people want to keep close. And the person who pauses beside that shrine is still facing the same ordinary problems as everyone else. Food has to be bought. Work has to be done. Bills have to be settled. Children have to be cared for. People have to travel. Illness has to be faced. The gods are woven into those concerns rather than placed somewhere completely apart from them. That is why religion is so difficult to separate from everyday Roman life. It can happen in the house before breakfast. It can happen beside a workshop. It can happen at a neighborhood shrine. It can fill a temple. It can close streets during a festival. And then, when the ceremony is over, people simply return to whatever they were doing before. You leave the temple behind. The street grows quieter for a moment. Then you hear laughter ahead. A group of people is standing together, apparently with nowhere urgent to be. One gestures toward another street. Someone else joins them. They begin walking together. You watch them disappear into the crowd. They are not carrying goods. They are not opening a shop. They are not heading toward a fountain. Whatever they are doing, it can wait. And that makes you curious. Because Rome has spent the morning showing you how people work, eat, wash, worship, and survive. But people do not spend every waking hour working. Sooner or later, the city has to make room for something else. Somewhere ahead, people are already gathering for it. You follow the small group ahead. They are not carrying anything, and there is no obvious destination connected to work. They walk together, talking as they go, occasionally stopping to let others pass. For most of the morning, nearly everyone you have encountered has had somewhere to be or something to carry. This is different. They have time. A little farther on, you find out how some Romans use it. Several people are gathered around a table outside a small establishment. A game is underway. Pieces are being moved across the board, while two players argue over a move that has just been made. Someone nearby laughs at their disagreement and keeps watching. Nobody appears particularly concerned about getting somewhere else. Games like these could occupy an ordinary afternoon. Dice, board games, and other forms of recreation gave people something to do when there was no work demanding their attention. Soldiers played them, workers played them, and people with more leisure had even more time for them. You continue down the street. Another doorway is opened farther along, and this time the smell of food and wine reaches you before you see the people inside. It is a tavern or one of the many small food and drink establishments scattered through the city. There is nothing especially grand about it. A few people sit together, talking over their meal. Someone has a cup in front of them. Another person is playing a game while listening to a conversation at the next table. This is leisure on a much smaller scale than the great spectacles of Rome. You could spend part of an afternoon here without planning anything more complicated than meeting a friend and staying until you feel like leaving. That is worth remembering. Roman leisure is not always something the state provides for thousands of spectators. Sometimes it is simply a few people sitting together, eating, drinking, talking, and deciding not to hurry. You move on. The streets are still busy, but the flow has changed. People who were working earlier are beginning to look for other ways to spend the hours ahead. Further into the city, the crowd becomes more concentrated around a large theater. You follow them inside. The building feels different from the street immediately. The audience is gathered in rows, facing a stage where actors and performers will appear. Conversations continue while everyone settles. and the noise rises whenever something catches the attention of the crowd. Then the performance begins. Actors appear. Music accompanies the performance. The audience reacts. Some laugh, while others call out when something particularly catches them. The crowd is not silent in the modern sense. People respond to what they see, and the energy of the room changes with the performance. The theater is not only somewhere to watch actors, it is also somewhere to spend time with other people. Someone you know may be sitting nearby. A friend may have arranged to meet you here. A wealthy patron may occupy a prominent position. A large performance creates its own social world for a few hours. Eventually, the performance ends. People begin filing back into the streets. You follow them. By now, the afternoon has advanced, and another crowd is moving in a different direction. This one is much larger. You hear the noise before you understand where it is coming from. A cheer rises somewhere ahead, then another. People are calling out to one another as they hurry toward the same destination. You follow the movement. The circus is ahead. The scale becomes difficult to appreciate from the street. You can see the long structure stretching farther than you expected, with spectators gathering in enormous numbers around the track. The atmosphere is different from the theater. People are already talking about the racers. Some have chosen favorites. Others are arguing about which faction will do better. The horses are being prepared. The chariots are waiting. Then the race begins. The reaction is immediate. The crowd surges into noise. Chariots sweep around the track, horses running at full speed while drivers try to hold their lines through the turns. A mistake can change everything in a moment. The people around you react to every near collision, every successful turn, every change in position. A racer pulls ahead. Someone nearby shouts his name. Another spectator is furious. Then the order changes again. For a few minutes, almost everyone in the building is thinking about the same thing. That helps explain why chariot racing could become such a powerful form of entertainment. The race itself is short. The attachment to it can last for years. Spectators could identify strongly with racing factions, following their colors, discussing their drivers, and celebrating victories as though the success belonged to them personally. The charioteers could become famous. Their names could spread far beyond the track. A successful driver was not simply someone who happened to be good with horses. The fame attached to the races could turn him into a recognizable public figure. And yet, even in a place where everyone is watching the same race, Roman society remains visible. Seats are not distributed randomly. The most prestigious positions belong to people of higher rank, while others watch from farther away. You can share the same excitement as thousands of other spectators and still be reminded that your place in Roman society follows you into the arena. The city has not forgotten who you are. Leisure has simply given everyone something else to think about for a while. When the race ends, the crowd begins to spill back into the streets. You move with them. Some people head home. Others have another destination. Then you notice another stream of people moving toward a huge building. You follow them and soon find yourself outside an amphitheater. The atmosphere here is different again. Inside, the seating rises around the arena, and people settle into their places as the program begins. Gladiatorial contests can take different forms, and the program may also include animal hunts and other spectacles. The people in the arena are there to perform before an audience. For the spectators, the experience is also about anticipation, reaction, conversation, and the excitement of seeing something they cannot see anywhere else. You watch the crowd as much as the arena. Some people lean forward, others react loudly. A few remain surprisingly calm. Someone beside you comments on what is happening. Another person answers. The event continues. For the people taking part, the stakes are very different from those of the audience. The crowd can return home after an afternoon of entertainment. The people inside the arena cannot simply walk away when they are tired of it. And even here, social rank remains visible. The best seats are reserved according to status, so the same spectacle can look very different depending on where you have been placed. Then you begin to notice another part of the event, the scale. An afternoon like this requires enormous resources. Animals have to be transported, performers have to be organized, buildings have to be maintained, staff have to prepare the venue. Thousands of spectators need somewhere to sit. Someone is paying for all of it. In Imperial Rome, public spectacles can also serve as a way for emperors and wealthy patrons to display generosity and influence. The crowd gets an afternoon of entertainment. The person funding it gets to be associated with the spectacle. Most people watching do not need to think about that while they are there. They came because they wanted to see the event. That is enough. You leave the amphitheater with the crowd. People are already talking about what they have seen. Some are arguing about the race earlier in the day. Others are discussing the performance. A group nearby is laughing about something that happened in the arena. The excitement follows them back into the streets. But it does not last forever. The light has changed. The sun is lower now, and buildings are casting longer shadows across the roads. The crowd begins to thin as people turn toward their neighborhoods. A shopkeeper starts pulling things inside. A worker carries one last load through the street. Some people are still talking about the afternoon's events, while others are already thinking about food and getting home. You keep walking with them. The noise of the circus is fading behind you. The streets are still busy, but the feeling is different now. There is more space between people. More doorways have begun to close. The light continues to weaken. Rome is moving into the evening. You keep walking with the people leaving the afternoon's entertainment. The crowds are thinner now. The streets that were packed a short while ago are beginning to settle. Shopkeepers are bringing their goods inside. Workers are finishing what remains of the day's tasks. People are turning back toward the neighborhoods where they live. The sunlight is lower. Long shadows stretch across the road, and the narrow passages between buildings are beginning to lose the last of the direct light. You notice how quickly the city changes when that happens. During the day, there are people everywhere. A loud argument can draw attention from half the street. Someone who stumbles or falls has people nearby who can help. Shop fronts are open, doors are visible, and most of the road is exposed to the light. As evening approaches, some of that disappears. The streets do not become empty. People still have places to go. Workers are finishing late shifts. Others are returning from dinner or the baths. Some businesses remain open, and there are people whose work continues after sunset. But the darkness changes the journey. A doorway that looked harmless in the afternoon becomes difficult to see into. A side street disappears into shadow. Someone walking alone has fewer people watching what happens around them. You stay on the busier road. Most people who make the same journey will get home without anything happening to them. Rome's night is not one long emergency. Still, the lack of light creates opportunities for theft, intimidation, and violence, and Roman writers knew that well. Some of the most dramatic descriptions come from satirists who had every reason to make the city's streets sound worse than they really were. Even with that exaggeration in mind, darkness makes an unfamiliar road less predictable. You notice people adapting. A wealthier household passes with attendants and lamps. Another person walks beside a companion. Someone else keeps to a route they clearly know well. Nobody needs to explain the reason. You continue along the street. More doors are closing now. The businesses that were open all afternoon are becoming quieter as their owners begin putting things away. A final customer leaves one shop. A shutter comes down somewhere nearby. Then you smell smoke. At first, it seems ordinary. Cooking fires are part of daily life. Lamps are being lit. Ovens and furnaces have been burning since morning. People need fire to cook and heat water, and workshops may depend on it as well. But the smell changes. There is a sharper edge beneath the familiar smoke. You look ahead. People have stopped. Someone points toward the upper part of a building. Then you see a glow behind a window. The flames are still small, but they are visible. A voice rises from the street. Someone shouts for help. A door opens. Another person runs outside. Within moments, an ordinary evening has become something else. The danger of fire in Rome is not difficult to understand. People live close together. Some apartment buildings rise several stories. Cooking depends on flame. Lamps burn after sunset. Workshops may use heat. Once a fire reaches a building structure, the problem can spread beyond the room where it started. You look up toward the higher floors. People are trying to get out. Someone carries a child. Another person grabs whatever can be reached quickly. Smoke begins to spread through the building. The street fills with voices. Water is brought toward the fire. People shout instructions to one another. Then, an organized response begins. Rome has had to develop people whose job is to deal with fires and certain problems of the night. Under Augustus, the city establishes the vigiles, a permanent force responsible for firefighting and also for nighttime security duties. Their presence is one of the ways Rome tries to manage the risks created by such a large and densely built city. You see men arriving with equipment. Some carry water. Others bring tools for breaking into structures or pulling apart burning sections. The response is practical. There is no modern fire engine waiting to flood the building from a safe distance. The people fighting the fire have to get close enough to work. And sometimes, the best way to stop a fire is not to save the building already burning. It is to keep the flames from reaching the next one. That can mean clearing a path between buildings, removing material, or pulling down part of a structure before the fire can cross into it. The street has become a workplace. Everyone nearby has to decide what they are going to do. Some help. Some move their belongings. Some stand back and watch. Others simply try to get out of the way. And while most people are concerned with the fire, confusion creates another kind of danger. A house that has been emptied leaves rooms behind it. A shop can suddenly be unattended. Property may be scattered in the street. People are frightened and distracted. Not everyone who arrives at a disaster has come to help. Eventually, the flames begin to weaken. Smoke hangs over the buildings. People stand outside looking upward. The structure that was part of the neighborhood that afternoon may now be damaged or unsafe. For the people who lived there, the consequences will continue long after the fire is gone. A home can be lost. A shop can lose its stock. A family may need somewhere else to sleep. A person's livelihood can disappear in a single evening. The city will repair what it can and clear away what it must. People will find temporary places to stay. Life will continue. But for the people caught inside the fire, the ordinary evening has already been divided into before and after. You leave the smoke behind. The streets are darker now. A man passes carrying a lamp, and for a moment, the light picks out his face before he disappears again. Another person walks quickly toward a familiar doorway. Farther ahead, voices drift from inside a building. Rome has not gone to sleep. It has simply moved indoors. Most people are still doing ordinary things. They are finishing work, meeting friends, returning to their families, preparing food, or deciding where they will spend the rest of the evening. The danger of the night exists alongside all of that ordinary life. That distinction matters. Rome is not a city where every dark street hides an attacker, just as every cooking fire does not become a disaster. Most evenings are uneventful. People simply get on with their lives. But the darkness changes what can be seen, what can be heard, and how quickly help might arrive when something does go wrong. You notice the people who remain outside. A worker carrying something through the late street. Someone tending a business that has not yet closed. A guard watching the road. People who cannot simply go home when the sun disappears. Night belongs to them as much as it belongs to anyone eating dinner behind a closed door. You keep walking. The light from lamps becomes more noticeable now. One doorway glows warmly. Another is almost completely dark. Further along, someone is still talking with a customer. A late delivery passes through the street. The city has not stopped working. It has changed its rhythm, and the same streets that were crowded with shoppers and spectators only a few hours ago are now carrying people toward their evening lives. You pass another doorway. This one is open. Warm light reaches across the ground outside. Someone inside is setting a table. You hear dishes being moved and a voice calling from deeper in the room. A moment later, laughter comes from inside. You continue. Another doorway gives you a glimpse of a family preparing their evening meal. Farther along, a busier room is filled with people eating and talking. The smell of cooked food drifts into the street, mixed with wine and the smoke of a cooking fire. You slow down. After everything you have seen today, Rome feels different now. The streets are darker, the crowds have thinned, and much of the life you watched unfolding in the open has moved behind doors. A meal is being prepared somewhere nearby. People are returning home. Others are meeting friends. Some will spend the rest of the evening at a tavern, while others will remain with their households. The city is still alive, but it no longer belongs to the daytime crowds. You keep walking as the smell of food follows you along the street. The noise of the circus has disappeared. The shops are closing. The lamps are taking over from the sun. And behind the doors of Rome, the evening is beginning in 100 different ways. The warm light follows you along the street. You can smell food from several houses now. One doorway is open, and a family is already preparing its evening meal. Someone carries a dish from one room to another. Another person calls from inside, and for a moment, you hear laughter before the door closes again. A little farther along, the smell changes. Something is cooking over a fire. Wine, bread, seasoned food. The day has been long, and Rome is beginning to eat. For Romans, the main meal of the day is the cena. By this period, it is generally taken in the evening, after much of the day's work and other activity has finished. But there is no single Roman dinner. For one household, it may be a simple meal eaten at home. For another, dinner can be an important social occasion, with guests, servants, several courses, and hours of conversation. And for someone living in a crowded part of the city, an evening meal outside the home may be easier. You follow the sound of voices. A tavern is still open. People are eating and drinking inside after the working day. The room is warmer than the street, and the noise spills outside whenever the doorway opens. You look in. There is nothing especially formal about the place. People sit together, talk, drink, and eat. Someone laughs across the room. Another person plays a game while listening to a conversation nearby. This is another kind of Roman evening. You could finish work, come here, eat something, talk for a while, and leave when you felt like it. The larger dinners you have heard about belong mainly to wealthier households. You leave the tavern and continue walking. A little farther away, the evening looks very different. The entrance to a large house is brightly lit. People are arriving, and those who enter are greeted before disappearing inside. Dinner here is not simply a larger version of the meal you just saw. It is an event. The guests have been chosen. Food has been arranged. Wine is ready. The household staff are already working. Inside, there is more space than in the home where you woke this morning, and the dining room is arranged around the furniture that has become closely associated with elite Roman meals. 3 couches surround a table. The guests recline rather than sit upright, leaning on one arm while eating with the other. The arrangement itself encourages conversation and gives the evening a social structure. Where you recline matters. Who sits near the host matters. Who receives the best food matters. The meal may be generous, but that does not make everyone equal. The host can show favor through the people invited, the places given to them, and the attention they receive. Dinner is part meal and part social performance. The first dishes arrive. Servants move through the room, carrying food and wine, clearing dishes, and answering requests. The guests can relax because other people are working around them. The same pattern you have seen throughout Rome has followed you inside the dining room. Comfort is built on labor. Food arrives because someone prepared it. Wine reaches the table because someone has mixed and served it. The room stays orderly because the household has been preparing for this evening long before the guests arrived. There may be several courses, some familiar, and others made with ingredients that would be expensive for an ordinary household to obtain. A wealthy host can use dinner to demonstrate what the household can afford. As the meal continues, conversation becomes easier. Stories are told. Someone interrupts. Another guest laughs. The evening becomes less formal as people settle in. But the relationships around the table still matter. Why were these people invited? Who is a close friend? Who is useful to the host? Who is connected through business, family, or patronage? An invitation can mean more than a free meal. You have already seen how patronage can shape a Roman's life. A powerful patron can offer protection, opportunities, money, or connections, while a client can remain dependent on that relationship. A morning greeting might be brief. An evening invitation to dinner can carry a different kind of importance. Not everyone receives one, and the distinction can say something about where a person stands. The dining room, therefore, becomes another place where Roman hierarchy is visible without anyone needing to announce it. People can genuinely enjoy one another's company, but pleasure and status can exist at the same table. The evening continues. More food appears. The conversation grows easier. Someone tells a joke. Another guest answers with a story of their own. The meal has lasted far beyond the point where anyone was simply hungry. Dinner has become time spent together. Eventually, you step back into the street. The change is immediate. The house behind you was warm and brightly lit. Outside, the evening is cooler. Lamps mark some doorways, while other stretches of road are already dark. You pass another tavern. This one is louder than the first. People have settled in for the night rather than stopping for a quick meal. Someone is eating, someone else is drinking. Two people are arguing about something that probably seemed important to them a few minutes ago. The city has different rhythms for different people. A worker may finally be eating after a long shift. A merchant may still be discussing business. Friends may stay together longer than they intended. Someone working at night may barely notice that the day has ended. The evening is not over simply because the shops have closed. You walk farther. The streets are quieter now, but not empty. A lamp approaches, then passes. A door opens and closes. Laughter comes from another building. Someone calls to a person farther down the road. The city is gradually settling. Inside homes, people are finishing their meals. In taverns, conversation continues. Elsewhere, guests are beginning to leave dinner parties and make their way home. One by one, the evening gatherings start to thin. The food becomes less important. The conversations become quieter. People begin thinking about where they will sleep. You continue walking. By now, the city feels very different from the Rome you entered before dawn. In the morning, the streets belong to workers and shoppers. In the afternoon, they belong to crowds gathered for entertainment. Now the daytime noise has retreated behind doors. A few windows remain lit. A tavern is still open. Someone is still working. A guard watches the road. The night is deepening. You keep walking as the lamps seem farther apart and the voices grow quieter. The evening meal is behind you now. Most of the city is beginning to settle, but Rome has not gone to sleep. The people who remain outside are the ones whose work, habits, or circumstances keep them awake. And as the night grows darker, their Rome is beginning to take shape. The evening gatherings are thinning out now. The people who spent the last few hours eating, talking, and visiting are beginning to disappear behind their doors. A tavern remains open somewhere behind you, but its voices no longer carry as far as they did earlier. You keep walking. The lamps are easier to notice now. One burns beside a doorway, lighting a small patch of road. A few steps farther, another stretch of street is already dark. There is no continuous line of light guiding you through the city. Beyond each small pool of brightness, the buildings seem to recede into shadow. You pass through one patch of light and then another. Someone approaches, carrying a lamp of their own. For a moment, their face is clear. Then they pass, and the light moves away with them. The night changes what you can see, but it does not empty Rome. Some people still have reasons to be outside. A tavern has not yet closed. A traveler needs somewhere to sleep. A household servant may be accompanying someone home. A worker may still have something to finish before returning to bed. And on some streets, traffic continues well after the daytime crowds have gone. You turn onto a quieter residential road. Here, the difference is easier to feel. Most of the shops are closed, and only a few windows remain lit. You can still hear activity from the busier streets farther away, but it reaches you as a distant mixture of voices and movement, rather than a constant crowd. Then you hear wheels. A wagon is approaching. The driver calls out, and the sound of the wheels striking the uneven stones reaches you before the vehicle appears. The wagon passes. For a moment, the whole street seems to listen to it. Then the sound begins fading around the next corner. Some heavy deliveries were made at night, when restrictions on daytime vehicle traffic and quieter streets could make movement easier. For the driver, the journey is simply another part of the working day. For someone living above the road, the same wagon may be the sound that wakes them. You glance up at the buildings. Several stories rise above you. Most of the windows are dark, but not all. Behind one, a lamp is still burning. Behind another, someone moves. A little later, you hear a floorboard creak. Then a child cries briefly and falls quiet. Somewhere farther up, a door opens onto a landing. The building is full of people, even though the street below looks almost empty. That is one of the strange things about sleeping in a crowded Roman city. The night does not separate you completely from other lives. You may be sharing a building with families, workers, children, servants, and neighbors whose names you barely know. Their footsteps can travel through the structure. A conversation may come through a wall. Someone climbing the stairs can disturb a room several levels away. And then there are the noises from outside. A cart, a voice, a dog, a late arrival at the doorway. You imagine someone trying to sleep after a long day of work, only to wake when a wagon passes below. The room goes quiet again. The person turns over. Eventually, perhaps, they fall asleep. That is one of the less visible costs of crowded urban life. The city that keeps people supplied and businesses running also reaches into their bedrooms. You continue walking. A little farther away, the road opens back toward a busier part of the neighborhood. There is still some movement there. A tavern remains open. Someone carries a lamp from one doorway to another. A late customer appears. Two people stop to speak. Then they go their separate ways. You do not stop. The night is moving slowly now. Some people are still working. Others are finishing their evening. A watchman may be keeping an eye on a doorway or road nearby. The vigiles continue their duties, even though you are unlikely to see them on every street. Most people do not need them. Most evenings pass without anything unusual happening. That is worth remembering. Rome at night is not a city in permanent panic. It is simply a city where the absence of daylight makes certain things harder. A familiar street becomes less obvious. A stranger is harder to read from a distance. A person walking alone has fewer people around to notice if something goes wrong. So people adapt. They use lamps. They travel with others. They stay on routes they know. They return home when they have finished what brought them out. And some simply remain inside. You turn away from the busier road again. This neighborhood is quieter. The lamps are fewer. Most of the doors are closed. You can still hear Rome somewhere beyond the buildings, but it feels far away. There is no reason to hurry. You walk for several minutes without passing anyone. Then, at the end of the street, a figure appears. They are carrying something close to their body. As they approach, you can see that it is a small bundle. Perhaps they are bringing something home. Perhaps they are finishing an errand. They pass without speaking. A moment later, they are gone. You continue. The lack of conversation makes smaller sounds more noticeable. Your footsteps against the road. Your breathing. A faint movement from an upper room. The hinge of a door. Then, somewhere in the distance, a burst of laughter from a tavern. It lasts only a few seconds before the buildings swallow it again. You walk on. The night is not silent. It is simply made up of separate sounds rather than one continuous noise. That feels different from the daytime city. During the day, the next sound arrives before the last one has faded. At this hour, there can be several quiet moments between them. You begin to notice the air as well. The heat of the day has gone from the stones. The smell of cooking is weaker. The streets feel cooler. Behind the walls, lamps are burning lower. Some households are still talking. Others have already gone to sleep. The city is withdrawing from the street, one home at a time. You pass a doorway where a servant is extinguishing a lamp. The small flame disappears. For a moment, the entrance is completely dark. Farther down the road, another light remains. Someone is still awake there. That small difference seems strangely important. One house has finished for the night, another has not. Rome does not have one bedtime. The wealthy household entertaining guests may remain awake much later than the worker who has to rise before dawn. A tavern keeper may continue serving customers. A guard may remain at his post. A traveler may arrive long after most households have gone to bed. Someone working a late shift may still be waiting for the night to end. The city keeps different hours for different people. You continue along the road. Eventually, you turn toward the neighborhood where you began. The route is becoming familiar. You recognize a doorway, then the corner beyond it. The building where you woke this morning is somewhere ahead. It is strange to think how much has happened since then. At first, this city seemed almost impossible to understand. You could hear it before you could see it. Then you walked through its streets. You ate. You watched people work. You saw the baths. You noticed the shrines. You watched races and spectacles. You saw the city change as the sun moved across it. Now almost all of those people are behind closed doors. The streets that seemed crowded in the morning have become much easier to cross. You keep walking. A distant wagon passes on a larger road. The sound reaches you and fades. Somewhere else, a tavern door closes. A voice rises from an upper floor. Then the neighborhood settles again. You reach the street where your home is located. The lamps are fewer here. Most windows are dark. The building looks smaller than you remember it. Perhaps it is because you are tired, or perhaps because the city outside has finally stopped demanding your attention. You stand for a moment before the entrance. The same doorway you passed this morning, the same walls, the same stairs waiting inside. But you are not the same person who stood here earlier. When you woke before dawn, you did not know what was beyond the room. Now you know the direction of the streets. You know the sound of the carts. You know what lies behind some of the doors. You have spent the whole day moving through Rome, and now there is nowhere else you need to go. You open the door. The warmer air of the building surrounds you. The street disappears behind the closing door. For a moment, you remain still. The sounds outside are softer here. A distant cart. A quiet voice. Someone moving on an upper floor. Then, even those sounds begin to fade. You climb the stairs slowly. You know the way now. The room where you began the day is waiting. The light is low. The bed is still where you left it. Nothing has changed very much. Only you have. You enter the room and close the door. Outside, Rome continues its quieter work. Inside, there is finally nothing you need to do. You have spent the day in the streets. Now the streets can continue without you. You lie down. The night has become deep. And for the first time since you opened your eyes before dawn, you do not need to listen for what comes next. You already know where you are. You let the room become quiet around you. Rome is still awake somewhere beyond the walls. But here, the door closes behind you. For a moment, you remain in the passage, listening. The evening has almost disappeared from the building. There are no crowds outside now, only the occasional sound reaching through the walls, a footstep on the stairs, a door being opened, a voice too distant to understand. You climb slowly. The stairs are familiar now. This morning, they were part of a building you had never seen before. Tonight, you already know which turn leads toward your room. You reach the doorway. Inside, the room is dark except for the small flame of your lamp. You enter and set down the few things you carried home. There is nothing elaborate to prepare. The clothes worn through the day are put aside for tomorrow. A small oil lamp gives just enough light to see the bed and the familiar shapes around the room. You sit for a moment. The building is quiet enough that you can hear another household somewhere nearby. Someone moves across a floor. A child makes a brief sound and settles again. A door closes. Then the building returns to its usual nighttime murmur. You lie down. The bedding is simple, but you are tired enough that simplicity does not matter. Your body has carried you through the entire day. The streets, the stairs, the crowds, the long hours outside. You do not need to go anywhere now. The lamp continues to burn beside you. Its light reaches only a small part of the room, leaving the corners in shadow. You look toward the doorway. For the last time tonight, you can still see its outline. Then you lower the flame. The light disappears. The room becomes dark enough that its walls are no longer visible. You do not need them to be. You know where they are. Outside the room, the building continues to hold the other lives around you. Someone may still be awake. Someone may arrive late. A neighbor may climb the stairs. Farther away, on one of Rome's larger roads, a wagon may still be moving through the night. The sounds reach you faintly and then pass. You do not follow them. You remain where you are. The day has already gone beyond you. The street where you bought bread this morning is quiet now. The shops have closed. The places that were crowded during the afternoon have emptied. Behind their doors, families are settling into the night in their own ways. Some rooms are silent. Others are not. Some people have gone to sleep already. Others still have work to finish. Your own room grows still. The lamp is out. Only a little light from somewhere beyond the building reaches the room now, too faint to reveal much. You remain awake for a while. The mind is still carrying pieces of the day. Not enough to follow, just impressions. Warmth from the baths, the sound of wheels on stone, the glow of the evening streets, a voice somewhere beyond the wall. Then even those begin to fade. You turn onto your side. The mattress shifts beneath you. The bedding settles. A final sound comes from the passage. Footsteps, slowly approaching, then moving away. The silence that follows feels deeper, not complete. The building is still there. Rome is still there. But neither requires your attention anymore. You lie still. The room that seemed unfamiliar before dawn has become the last place you see before the night takes over. Outside, the city continues in its own rhythm. A late worker finishes what remains. A guard keeps watch somewhere beyond your street. A traveler settles into an unfamiliar room. A household sleeps behind another wall. You do not need to know which streets they occupy. You only hear the faintest traces of them. Then those traces become harder to distinguish. The building settles. The street settles. Your thoughts become less connected to one another. The morning will come when it comes. For now, there is only the dark room, the quiet movement of the building, and the steady feeling of the bed beneath you. Nothing is asking you to get up. Nothing is waiting for you outside the door. The city can continue without you for a few hours. And slowly, the last details of the room begin to disappear. The doorway, the walls, the faint sounds beyond them, even the sense of where one thought ends and another begins. The night deepens, and the room becomes the quietest part of Rome you know. A final sound reaches you from somewhere far beyond the building. Then it fades. The darkness remains, and you rest there until there is nothing left to notice.